Hey everybody, today we're making steak knives. We're going to focus on making one, but just remember all the processes are times six. Here's what it looks like, but let's get to making. So these knives are going to be made with the stock removal process. I have this template made out of wood that's going to be my guide. We've got the knife and how it fits into the handle. So I traced that out onto the steel, and I'm just going to use the bandsaw, which I don't have footage of, but just cut out the perimeter. The forging is the most fun part of knife making. It's not always necessary. This is only 16th inch stock, so it's really better to, or I found for me, and it being stainless, it's just easier to cut them out and grind them to shape. So no forging involved. So that kind of skips the first step. But so here I'm cleaning up the profile, getting everything exactly how I want it to be, following those scribe lines. I switched to horizontal here so the scratches run lengthwise. It's just better for heat treat. And I drill a hole in the pin, or for a pin for the handle attachment later. Got to do that before heat treat because you cannot drill afterwards. And I set the kiln up to be the appropriate temperature for this AEBL steel that I'm going to use. And while that's heating up, there's just a little glimpse of where we're at. And but while that's heating up, I foil package the stainless. It's something you have to do when doing stainless steel to keep the oxygen off of the knife, because unlike carbon steel or high carbon steel, stainless at these extreme temperatures really wants to oxidize, and you'd have to grind quite a bit off if you didn't do this process. So I have this stainless pack, and I make these little pouches, just folding over a few times to get everything airtight, and then into the kiln for heat treat. And there they all are. Wait for them to get up to temperature. And then my quenching process is, this is air-cooled steel, so I just drop down in between these two aluminum plates, which helps suck the heat out and also keep it straight. Give it some foot pressure and blow with the air compressor. And that cools the steel fast enough for things to harden. Cut them out of the pouches and into the temper oven. I like to just clamp them all together. It kind of makes a bigger thermal mass so that they don't warp during the temper cycle. And now that they're all heat treated and brought back in hardness from tempering, I just clean the ricasso area, because that where the blade and the handle meet isn't going to be touched again with the grinder. It has nothing to do with the bevels, so I just want to clean that up. And I scribe on some center guidelines so I know where I want my center to be, and then it's just grinded those bevels. On a stock this thin, only 16th inch, it's pretty challenging for me. It's not a lot of steel to remove, but it's such a fine margin of error. The bevel is probably only 1 degree, off of flat. So it's tough not to overgrind or overshoot or miss your center mark. It was kind of a long process because I just really wanted to go slow. But then I move up the grits. Just once I have the bulk of it removed with the coarser grits, it's now just a matter of refining those scratch patterns. And here's where we're at. And then I'm going to set the plunge line, just kind of creeping that back so I get a nice rounded, beautiful plunge with this waterfall platen, which is just an edge that I'm using. And then I switch to the rotary platen to once again just refine those scratches. Set a very gentle convex. It's not really necessary with this thin a stock, but and here we are when we're finished with the belt grinder. And then it's on to hand polishing. Quite a bit of this, especially with 6 knives. It went pretty fast. I was able to just start right at 320 grit. And I'm going to leave these at 400 because I just want that nice satin finish. And there they all are, all hand polished. And there's the pile of paper it took to get there. And now it's time to go to the handles. I'm going to do a frame tang handle on these. So the tang of the knife is the same thickness as this center spacer. So it's going to have this neat kind of full tang look, but it's a hidden tang kind of knife. So I trace that tang out, cut it out. I need to flatten that area. So now it's got the same angle as the top of, or the bottom of the knife, and then I drill little holes at where the tang ends so that I can cut that tang shape out, take it over to the bandsaw, and just remove the rest of that material. The little holes help so that you can just pull it right out. There you go. And then I'm just a little bit of file fit up so that it fits nice and tight. Oh, a little more work. Each one was different, even though they followed the same template. You know, they're all handmade, but there's that nice tight fit that I like, and so that I don't mix up which blade is for which spacer, mark A through E. And now it's time to get the handle, the scales ready. So these have been sitting in my shop for a long time. They're wood, so they have that little gap. They're not flat, so I'm sorry about the focus here. But yeah, got to get them flat. So just a little bit of work with the grinder. And then I put a piece of sandpaper on the surface plate and just light drags, very little pressure. And then just with 120 grit, so the epoxy works really nice, but got to get these scales flat so that there's no gaps, and where there was a gap in between, now there is no gap. So they're ready for the next step. So I'm going to clamp each side individually to drill the pinholes to keep the handle in place. And that is also specific for each knife. So, and then I'm going to drill the holes into the other side, the other scale. I had the first side to use the tang as a guide, but on this side I'm using the hole from the other scale as my guide. Snap off some 2mm pin stock that I have a ton of, and I just chamfer the edges a little bit so they slide easy in and out so that there's no little burr on the edge where I clipped them. And it's time to check the handle assembly. Looks good. That's gonna, first pin holds all the handle together, and the second pin holds the knife together, or the knife into place. All looks good, everything fits nice. So time to polish up the front of the scales, because once it's all glued together, it's really difficult to refinish that area. So this part, once it's all polished up, won't be touched again. And then it's time to put my maker's mark on all the knives. This homemade little electro etch machine from Red Beard Ops is where I got the plans for that and made that. It's just salt water, a stencil, and switching between AC and DC current. The AC gets my logo etched in, and then the DC makes it black. And here's a little Windex to get the salt water off and neutralize it and clean that up. And this is what we end up with, just a little bit of cleaning the oxides off, and I get a nice pretty maker's mark. And now it's kind of a nerve-wracking part to do a batch this big because of the working time of epoxy. I kind of have to move quick, but mix in a little bit of blue epoxy or pigment just in case something, a little bit shows. It'll kind of blend in with that spacer material, and spread the epoxy on all the surfaces. I use a scribe just to kind of rough up this G10 spacer, just so there's another place for the epoxy to grab to, so it's not so smooth, but just little crisscross hatches, and get epoxy all over everything, and put the pins in, and just basically assemble the knife, get ready. I had to find the which one matched. Get that ready. And yeah, just move quick. Pins in, make sure it's sticking out each side, a little epoxy on the pins. These pins are so small, I'm not gonna peen them over. I think the epoxy is gonna hold just fine. Clean up any of the squeeze out, and here they're all glued up to cure overnight. So we're picking up the next day. It's now permanently attached together. No water gaps, everything looks good. I'm going to trace out just the general plan for the handle, cut the excess bits of pin off, and now it's time for the bulk removal of getting the handles to shape. Real rough aluminum oxide belt, and I'm just grinding to the Sharpie mark and just getting the bulk of that material off. Pretty long process. I try to get them to match as much as I can, and I'm just going to town, making that shape that I like. It's kind of a Coke bottle shape I make for my steak knives. I find it's really nice. It's got a little cant forward. There's that recurve in the steak knife so that you have a little bit of knuckle clearance on your plate when you're cutting, and I like the way it swoops down. With steak knives, you're kind of only using the last couple inches of the knife, really. So I kind of designed everything so that little couple inches is down a little bit. I think it works really well. And I'm just, now it's time to get them, so they are profile-wise to shape, and now it's time to get them contoured to shape. So different assortments of wheels and different processes I've kind of used, rocking here and there, and get this nice Coke bottle shape. And here we're just kind of chamfering all those edges. You don't want any sharp edges, so it's nice and comfy in the hand, rounding things over. This is all just the rough shaping, and then I switched to the slack belt and a scallop belt that doesn't have any hard edges to now do the fine polishing of, the big wheel, and the rough grit did most of the shaping, and this is just kind of rounding everything over. Got to be real careful not to dig in anywhere. And then you switch to hand polishing. Just a little bit of handwork, and then this is a woodwork tip I saw somewhere where you wet the grain once you're up in grits and let them, the grains of the wood rise a little bit, and then you sand those just high spots back down, because as this gets wet, it doesn't get rough. And then I have a mixture of mineral spirits and tung oil and boiled linseed oil to just kind of seal in the pores of the wood. And then I heat up the handle and just apply a coat of wax and buff that out. I'm going for a satin finish on these knives, and here they all are. It's a set. I like that it's a set, but they're all a little different. There's 2 red, 2 blue, 2 green. This was a custom order, and I'm really happy with them. I think they turned out great. I love that blue kind of tang line from the handle construction, and there's the knife. Thanks for following along.